So this is my favorite horror game of 2025. Routine was revealed to the world in 2012, over 13 years ago, and it became an inspiration for horror games of the 2010s like Alien Isolation, which pretty much everybody on planet Earth likes that game. The developers worked tirelessly on it until it fell into the dark around 2016 to not be picked up again until around 2020. They had to overhaul everything in it using the Unreal Engine 5, and now in 2025, over 13 years later, we finally have the final product. And after all the development hell it went through, the little indie horror game was worth it. An indie title that goes through that much of a development hell, you'd expect it to come out and not leave the biggest impression. You'd expect it to probably be a little bit disappointing. But for me, Routine is one of the best horror experiences I've had in a long time. And it's one of my all-time favorite first-person survival horror games. Without spoiling much, you wake up as an astronaut on a station that's located on the moon, and you find out that everyone is missing. You begin searching around, and you find out that there's a security system known as ASN that's gone haywire and is killing everyone on sight. You can already see this, but the hyper-realistic graphics would never have you guessing that this game started production around 2010. And with the VHS film grainy filter, it has the found footage look that really ups the scare factor. You probably have heard the saying before that older games tend to be scarier, and that's because the pixelated simple environments where there's details that are missing, you have to fill them in with your imagination, and that allows it to go crazy with fear and imagining the most terrifying thing to yourself. And that kind of counteracts a lot of hyper-realistic newer horror games that, in my opinion, aren't as scary. Routine captures the best of both worlds though, because even though it has the realistic graphics, it also has that grainy filter over it where it's hard to see very far in front of you. It's difficult to make out the details. It's difficult to see if there's an ASN security system far ahead of you that spotted you or not, and it makes all the details in the world fuzzier, adding that fear that came from playing older, more pixelated games, but now it has that with modern graphics. The found footage aesthetic plays with the player's imaginations, making you paranoid around every corner when you think you saw something that maybe was there or maybe isn't.
Hey, mister, I go another way. Follow me.
This is IC. He's a cute little robot who helps you on the beginning of your journey. He takes us down the road in this retro-futuristic world that Routine confidently shows off. I think some people could simplify this and simplify the creativity by saying that the developers are just remaking the Alien 1 aesthetics with the old industrial look. But in my opinion, by doing that, you're taking away so much of the talent that went into these designs. IC, that little cute robot, had me saying, I want an IC plushie, a toy, for the shelf behind me. This little guy is immediately recognizable to me, and I've only played this thing one time. The enemies have these terrifying designs, like the ASN enemy robots have almost this melted smiley face on them when chasing you that looks so distorted with that VHS grain. The standing offline ASN robots that are thrown around the entire compound make for a dreadful atmosphere, because at any point an ASN system can take control of one of these robots and start chasing you. He only can control one at a time, and that's the catch. So if you're moving past a shut down ASN robot, you're risking it turning it on, or it could just stay offline. It makes everything feel so intense. You don't know if you move too fast, if it will set them off, or if you're moving slower, you might be able to get past them. You feel like the big brother ASN is always watching you and choosing that best opportunity to attack. Obviously, you move a little bit faster than they do when you first start sprinting, but if you run out of breath, or if you're not quick enough on your feet, they will eventually catch up to you. And I still love this game from beginning to end, but something I would have done personally if I was a developer or a designer on this team is I wish they went a little bit further with the Big Brother vibe. You could have had the ASN cameras being able to spot you and tell your location to the nearest by robot and send it to your position. I think that could have added an extra layer to the sneakiness around ASN robots for the first half of the game. I also think there could have been a little bit more thought put into the environmental storytelling of Routine. Lots of the rooms feel fairly vacant, and the station itself doesn't give off that there was a story that happened here as much as I think it should have. This is me getting really nitpicky though, because I want to be clear. I think this is a masterpiece. I really do. The UI and the heads-up display are very minimal to fully immerse the player into the shoes of the main character. The UI with computers gives me flashbacks to games like Prey or Doom 3, which has one of my favorite UI tropes where you can float the cursor over the computer screens and you can click on emails or diary entries to get a passcode or information on a person or an enemy. It appeals to the horror kind of slow burn feeling to me. This complement also extends to your cat module gun, which can be used for accessing computers, or it can be used for finding secrets, overriding circuit breakers, or stunning an ASN robot for a brief second or two. This baby's got everything on it. You unlock more modules for your cat gun as you go through the game, and you'll be using all of them by the end to complete the tasks at hand. You're going to get more and more familiar with it as you go through the game, and even a couple of the modules are going to be used for helping out with enemies. Speaking of this freaking fat ass cat gun, every single sound effect has that satisfying retro industrial sound to it from your cat gun that sounds like old factory cogs and gears moving when you're sliding around to different modules, or the dial-up sound effects when clicking on buttons on the side of your cat gun, or the giant metal footsteps of the ASN droids walking up to you, or those blown out speakers on your adorable IC friend. It all has that mechanical feeling, that grit to it. So much passion and care must have gone into this. Your character doesn't even talk during gameplay. All you hear is his breathing and the shoes of your astronaut, and that just builds up the suspense. The sound effects do a great job at feeling like they're 360 as well, where you can tell where an enemy is within the room outside of your room. You can listen around and hear where they are, where they're walking to. You can take your risk with where you think the sound effect is, or you can peek around the corner if you dare to see if they've really gone away. My point is that all the sound effects here are top notch, and that's really all I have to say about it. We're coming back to that design philosophy, which to me is breathtaking in terms of detail, and the level of craft here is just unbelievable. As you can see right here, ASN robots don't insta-kill you, at least not on normal mode. This counters what we're used to in games like Amnesia or Alien Isolation, where the creature will insta-kill you. At first, I didn't really care for this change, but by the end of the game, after seeing some of the batshit crazy directions that the game takes with its plot, it grew on me a ton. I think it counters some of the major problems with things like the xenomorph in Isolation, where sometimes it'll just kill you for some bullshit reason, even though you were hiding from it, and then you're forced back 30 minutes to your last save, or your permadeath run is now ruined and it wasn't even your fault. And I'll say that eventually routine does become an insta-kill game, but it comes later on with a different type of enemy that you deal with. And that's where I want to talk about my favorite part about this game, and that is the pacing and progression of routine. And I think this is why it's one of my favorite first-person survival horror games, and better than most of its counterparts with that build-up. Let's talk about Alien Isolation and Amnesia. Both these games take a minute to get to the first big creature encounter. They are masters in their respective genre, but they take a minute to get to it. And I don't think taking a while is a bad thing. But in both these games, what is the scariest part of each one of them, to me personally, is the first time you encounter the creature in both games. Nothing is scarier than the first time that xenomorph jumps out of a vent in front of you. Routine dodges this common problem with survival horror games by starting you off with this lonely atmosphere, but it's also kind of quirky with the IC robots and the random little things that are going to make you laugh. It's very deceiving in the way it presents itself, because then you quickly meet the ANS robots. You weave around them for the next 2 to 3 hours. You're finally kind of starting to get used to them and could even eventually start getting bored of them. But right as soon as you think you're getting bored of them, the game does a massive pivot and gives you something even scarier to deal with, something more deadly. And you do that for another 3 hours and then the game is over. That is perfect pacing for a horror game. Alien Isolation, you'd meet the xenomorph, then dick around with the robots for hours on end before seeing the xenomorph again, and then go back and forth for a 14-hour storyline. Amnesia would have you wandering around for an hour or two before meeting the creature, and then never be able to match the intensity of that first encounter. Routine feels like a perfected version of that survival horror formula because it doesn't start off with the scariest stuff. It keeps on getting scarier and scarier until you peak with fear around the 4 or 5 hour mark of a 6 hour long game. It doesn't blow its load in the first hour like most first person survival horror games do. And this isn't even me throwing flack at Alien Isolation or Amnesia, by the way. I love those games, but it's just me using them as examples of the tropes that we see from first person survival horror games. The scariest moment I ever had in all of Routine happened to me probably in my last hour of playing the game. And I haven't been able to say that about a horror game in a very long time, because normally your scariest moments are within the first couple hours. This also all fits into my critique of some other reviews I've seen where some people have stated that Routine shows off its enemies too often. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, obviously, but in my experience, Routine never once showed off a single enemy too often, and the moment I started to get tired of a section, it was already moving on to the next one with a new enemy now. And if I ever wasn't being stalked by an enemy, I was enjoying some puzzle solving, one of the new modules on my cat gun, or I was just admiring the horrific atmosphere around me. Honestly, the only thing I could possibly find that I think some people might not like is that right after a very intense period during the middle of the game, you go back to doing puzzles before being stalked by a new enemy. And I think that might feel a little bit weird pacing wise for some people. Some people might not want to go back to doing puzzles after a pretty freaky section. You also go to a whole new area, which could be a little bit confusing for some people. For me, it didn't bother me at all because I like the level design a lot. There's tons of world building happening here when you're reading through these emails and reading through the diary logs, and you're solving cool puzzles that are engaging, and like some are really difficult. I had to write down and take pictures of stuff to keep track of it when I was going through the game. The only reason why I mentioned this is I could see for some people that this section of the game that slows down greatly for about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. I could see some people not getting along with that as much as I did. I've been playing a lot of horror games, and each one has faults of their own, including Routine, but none of these so far to me have genuinely scared the living shit out of me till I played this. And it's by far my favorite horror game of the year. Please give it a try. You're not going to regret it. The developers struggled to get this one out for 13 years, and I'm worried that they may not have the funding again to make another game, so please go out and support them. Buy it on Steam, wherever you're gonna get it. It's an underrated horror masterpiece to me, and it's my favorite scary game of the year. You can call it recency bias because this is also probably the last horror game I will play of the year, but I'm gonna remember this thing and I'm gonna revisit it years from now. The game's story wraps up in that 6-hour runtime, and it doesn't necessarily end on a confusing note, but it's one that will have you thinking for a while. It doesn't answer every single question that you have, but I almost think that's kind of intentional with some of the mysterious parts of the game. The Routine title, which they even state the meaning of the word routine, which is a sequence of actions regularly followed, so you know it has some importance here, but it makes a little bit more sense by the end based on your interpretation of the game. I think you can spend a lot of time debating the plot and debating some parts of it that go unanswered, but I think it's wonderful that it can be debated. I think it's wonderful that the plot and the world can be talked about because it's nice to see a level of mystery in a horror game again. Most stories feel the need to over-explain every part of their worlds, and they feel the need to spoon-feed it to the player. It's refreshing to have a game like Routine out there. It's just trying to tell you the story that needs to be told, the world building that needs to be told, without giving away too much about its enemies, about the mysteries of its world. And I love that. And I just hope we don't have to wait another 13 years to get another game from this developer. It's a mastercraft of the genre it's in, and it's one of my favorites within that genre. Please let me know what game I should play next on this channel. If I pick your comment, then I'll feature at the beginning of that video. And as always, like and subscribe if you want to see reviews on new horror games, and let me know if I'm crazy for my stellar praise of this game. But I really did just love it, guys. As always, we're going to be appreciating every single piece of horror out there. and I'm always going to appreciate you. Goodbye.